Welcome to EDU Mobile. In this section we'll be talking about what exactly responsive web design is. And since you are watching this video, I imagine that you have an idea or you know what it is, but not really what it exactly entails. So we're going to go over that. So the definition of responsive web design, it's an approach or a method to build one website that responds to multiple devices or screen sizes. So ultimately you have one HTML template that can adapt to whichever size the screen is, whether it's a desktop, a tablet, or a smartphone, and also if it's in the landscape or portrait position. So we can build different layouts depending on that. So it's really helpful, and in my opinion it's much better than having your regular website and then a mobile website. Why not just have one and have it adapt to the screen sizes? So responsive websites will change their layout as the browser is resized. So when you resize the browser, you'll see it actually change, and I'm sure you've seen this quite a bit because responsive web design is really caught on. And here's just an example of a responsive website. So we have the regular desktop version that you would see on a desktop or a laptop, and then we have a slimmed down tablet version. So if you were to view it on your iPad, you can see that the styling is different. You have the menu icons are now on the top because the sidebar is gone. Okay, because the sidebar takes up too much room to be displayed on a tablet. Well, at least be displayed well. And then over here we have the mobile version of the website or the template, which is really slimmed down. The icons are gone. You can see all these columns here are now in one column on top of each other. So it's a pretty well optimized example. Alright, let's see. There are three main methods or strategies involved when creating a true responsive site. And sometimes you might see sites that have some properties of a responsive site and some that aren't. Okay, so the main three things are fluid layouts, flexible or fluid images, and CSS3 media queries, which is the most important component of responsive web design. So let's start with fluid layouts. We can achieve fluid layouts by using percentages for widths as opposed to the old fixed width method. And you've probably seen something like, let me just take this example here. You might see a container with the width of 960 pixels as a popular width. Okay, so that's fixed. It's set at 960 pixels no matter what, no matter which device or how big or small the screen size is. We can use percentages like this to have it fluid. So when the browser's resized, this div, okay, this class here, will stay 70% of the browser no matter what. And we can change this in the media queries, which we'll talk about in a minute. And here you can see an example of a fluid layout. We have a header which stretches 90% across the viewing area. We have a main content section which is 50%. We have two, sidebars which are 20%. And then we have 5% padding, or 5% margin. And you may use percentages for margins and paddings, but you don't have to. You can still use fixed margins and paddings. Alright, so flexible images. To achieve flexible images, you want to give that a percentage as well. You want to actually give the image element a width of a percentage. And a lot of times in responsive web design, this is 100% because we want the image to take up the whole container. And if you don't do this, if you have fixed images, when you resize the browser or the screen, the image will leave its container element, or it'll be hidden if you set the overflow to hidden. but what we want is for the image to increase and decrease along with its container or with the browser. So that gives us flexible images. So next we have CSS3 media queries, which are it's the heart of responsive web design. It allows us to set certain styles that will only work on specified screen sizes. Alright, so here I have an example. This would go right inside of your CSS file. It's pretty simple. We have media, we have the @ media, and then only screen, which means that for any kind of monitor. You can also have print media that will only show up for print view. So right here we're saying for any screen that has a minimum width of 240 pixels and a maximum width of 568 pixels. And this is a common range. This usually pertains to just about any smartphone. iPhones, for example, the older iPhones are 320 pixels. The newer ones, I believe, are higher. But I don't think that there's any smartphone that goes above 568 that I know of. If you're using a tablet, you want to add another media query for a tablet, which is around 700 pixels or so. So what we would do is just we'd put in our CSS elements with the styles, just like we would with regular CSS. They just have to be in between these curly braces. So this will only work when the screen is in between here. You can also do just something like this. We could say max width, we could just say 540. So what this would do is add this styling to any screen that is less than 450 pixels, because that's the max width. Alright, so it's pretty easy to understand. Before you really understand what it is, it seems a little difficult, but it's really not. It's really simple. Once you get used to it, you'll be doing this with all templates and all websites that you build. So those were the three main components, but there are also other things to consider in responsive web design. First, we have the viewport meta tag, which is really important. You want to have that tag in the head section of your body, and this just prevents the zoom out feature that a lot of phones have. If you visit a non-responsive website, it'll zoom way out, and the text will be so small it's unreadable. And we can also add certain attributes to allow or disallow the user to zoom in. Like for say on an iPhone, sometimes the user can pinch it and it will zoom out. We can actually set that so that the user can't do that. Alright, the next thing we need to consider is mouse versus touch. Obviously, when you're using a desktop or a laptop, you have a mouse. When you're using a tablet or a smartphone, you're using your finger. So you have to kind of just keep that in mind, and you don't want things to be too small, because you want things to be bigger because it's your finger. It's not a mouse pointer, which can be a lot more precise. So you just got to keep that in mind when you create buttons or select lists, things like that. So you want kind of a big orientation. And next we have images and graphics. We talked about flexible images. You probably want to use bigger images than you would in a non-responsive template, because the images are going to be changing. If they stretch the browser out on a 27-inch monitor, your image is going to be too small if you set it to just how it would be in the standard size. So you want to just keep that in mind, and you also want to optimize the size and the quality. If you can, you might want to decrease the quality just a little so that the image is smaller. So the amount of content obviously needs to be taken into consideration. You don't want to cram too much content onto a smartphone or a small screen. So you really have to think about that. when you're when brainstorming a project, things like that. Alright, so that's pretty much the gist of responsive web design. Maybe we'll see more things as we go, but that's definitely that's the foundation of a responsive website or application.